This is The Five. You are now looking live at College Station, Texas, where President George H.W. Bush has arrived. His casket's traveling to his presidential library, where he will be buried. Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Waters, along with Martha MacCallum, Juan Williams, Kennedy, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. President George H.W. Bush's final journey home, the 41st Commander-in-Chief to be laid to rest this hour next to his wife Barbara and his daughter Robin at the Bush Presidential Library in College Station, Texas. His casket making the final leg of the journey by train, with mourners paying their respects along the way. In honor of the president's military service, the Navy will do a 21 strike fighter aircraft flyover, and we're going to bring that to you as soon as it happens. Before his final ride through the Lone Star State, friends and family, including his close friend James Baker and grandson George P. Bush, paid tribute to 41 in an emotional and moving funeral service.
The world became a better place because George Bush occupied the White House. He had a very effective way of letting me know when the discussion was over. He would look at me and he'd say, "Baker, if you're so smart, why am I president and you're not?" We rejoice, Mr. President, that you are safely tucked in now and through the ages with God's loving arms around you. Because our glory, George, was to have had you as our president and as such a friend.
Undoubtedly, when the last words are written on him, they will certainly include this: that the fulfillment of a complete life cannot be achieved without service to others. George Herbert Walker Bush is the most gracious, most decent, most humble man that I will ever know, and it's the honor of a lifetime to share his name. God bless you, Gampy, until we meet again.
All right. Well, Martha, we've seen this, the ceremonies play out over the week, and any reflections that you've had? My thing that's really struck me personally is the friendships that this man has endeared over the years. He was more than a president. He was just a dear, dear friend to all the people that worked with him and worked for him.
You know, John Meacham said he was the last great soldier statesman. And I think that so much of our feelings about the greatest generation are wrapped up in this president, this 41st president of the United States, who represents, I think, to so many of us, a generation that we have an understanding of in our own families. And we watch the passing of this president and all of the beautiful military components that have accompanied this, the incredible music, and it just gives you pause, and it makes you think about the life of your nation. Because whenever someone like this passes, you think about where we stand as a country and what we care about and who we are and what it means to be an American. And he gave us a potent reminder every day through his, as you say, Jesse, his personal expressions of the importance of friendship and family, but also his enormous devotion to the United States of America and how he spent his life carrying out that mission.
And I know, Juan, you definitely covered him closely during the time period when he was president. And one of the main themes I think everyone's been discussing is how hard he worked and how much he packed into each day. And if you just look at the one term, he accomplished so much in one term, from the Clean Air Act, the Civil Rights Act, Americans with Disabilities Act, overseeing the end of the Cold War, kicking Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait, just a massive amount of accomplishments for just 4 years.
I have such regard for him, and I think one of the refrains that you hear is about someone who was a good friend. So I was a very young White House reporter at the Washington Post, and one of my jobs was occasionally go take a ride with the vice president. And you can imagine, at that time, there was a very different Washington in terms of the size of the press corps. So it would be me, the Secret Service, some aides, and we'd be on the Air Force too, and we would just be talking. I mean, I'd go back home, and my wife would say, "Oh, how's your pal, Vice President Bush?" And I'd say, "Well, he thinks Earl Weaver's strategy," and we'd start talking baseball. I said, "We talked a lot of baseball," and we talked baseball for hours, and he loved baseball. He's a great athlete. But the thing that strikes me is always in listening today to his grandson. And I got to tell you, as a grandfather, how much it would mean to me to have a grandson get up there and not only say that his grandfather or Grampy was a great guy, But to talk about the idea that it wasn't just rhetoric. You know how sometimes you think the kids look at you when you're talking and think, oh, he's just talking. He's just saying that stuff. He said when his grandfather talked about honor, duty, when he talked about love of country, he said it wasn't something he just talked about. This was something that he lived and offered as an example. To me, that plus the granddaughters that were there today, I can't tell you, Jesse. I just think, you know, when you go, they can have all the ceremonies they want, but if the people who knew you best love you, man, I don't think you can get better than that.
And we've seen such an outpouring of love, not just from his family and his friends and the people that work for him, just amazing amount of just regular Americans watching the train go by or visiting his casket in Washington. Why don't we hear him in his own words, Kennedy? This is him in 1988 when he was nominated to be the Republican candidate for president in New Orleans. Let's listen.
For we're a nation of community, of thousands and tens of thousands of ethnic, religious, social, business, labor union, neighborhood, regional, and other organizations, all of them varied, voluntary, and unique. This is America, a brilliant diversity, spread like stars, like 1,000 points of light in a broad and peaceful sky.
Any thoughts?
In a broad and peaceful sky. The nice thing about this is it not only allows us to pay tribute to the generation, the greatest generation that Martha touched on, but this is also an aspirational life. And it's the kind of moment where you can reflect in your own life and say to yourself, how do I want people to remember me? Therefore, from this day forward, what will I do with my life? How will I go on this journey? How will I treat other people? How will I raise my children? How will I aim to inspire? How will I humbly ask for forgiveness? And it's those kinds of things, and Juan and I were talking about this last night. It really is a special moment for reflection as a country and for individuals. And if there's something about that we can carry forward, I think it is an incredible accomplishment for this former president.
Yeah, I've been personally affected by it. I mean, the man is so humble. I'm thinking to myself, maybe I should be more humble.
Don't do it.
No?
Greg? Too late.
It's too late.
Too late, Jesse. No one will believe it.
Okay, Greg, what do you say?
Okay, so it's an interesting thing to watch. I looked at the masses, which were very moving, and what did they talk about? Okay, so they talk about these things that are often mocked in contemporary pop culture. So what were the things? Duty, honor, patriotism, God forbid, faith. You are in it. They brought up faith in God and family. They brought up. So these are kind of all the things that we are constantly reminded in our modern culture is corny. But when it comes down to it, when you are faced with mortality and the loss of somebody special, these are actually the things that matter more than hashtags, you know, and sarcasm and cynicism and snark. You know what I'm saying? It's so easy to snark about traditional things, you know, about family and about religion, making fun of, oh, that's so old-fashioned and corny. But when it comes down to that moment in time and where everything's important, family, faith, duty, honor, sacrifice. That's all anybody talks about. It's almost as though it's biological.
Yeah, he came from a great family and made sure his other family members, especially his sons, valued service and putting the country above the person. And now we're looking at the processional travel to the Bush Presidential Library in College Station, Texas. Let's listen to President George H.W. Bush talking about, in the State of the Union, I believe it was 1991, the consequences of Saddam Hussein invading Kuwait.
Saddam Hussein's unprovoked invasion, his ruthless, systematic rape of a peaceful neighbor, violated everything the community of nations holds dear. The world has said this aggression would not stand, and it will not stand.
And if you think about modern military campaigns, Martha. This was executed so perfectly. With the international coalition so firmly behind him. There were parades in America afterwards. There wasn't a lot of overreach, and it was something that he believed so strongly in that after the Cold War was finished, the United States was there to keep and maintain the peace.
It's a great point, Jesse. And, you look back on that coalition that he built. He spent his entire adult life essentially building that coalition.
Yep.
He was UN ambassador. He was the ambassador to China. He worked on his relationships with people in a sincere way that had a lot of depth. And, we've talked a lot about the notes that he would write to everybody. That's meaningful. That's building networks, building friendships over time. And I also think that one of the great things about this man was his sincerity. He didn't appear to be working it just so that he could work it. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody understands what I mean by that.
Yeah, you're talking about Jesse.
Yeah. It's truly a genuine people person.
No, it's sincerity and authenticity.